Previews don't get bigger than this one. A season-defining game at the Cladara on Saturday. Hello, and a very warm welcome to Under the Abbey Stand. My name is Jordan Wallen. This is your Friday preview pod. I hope the nerves are okay. I have a panel joining me today. First up, a man that not only resided in Nottingham once, but believe it or not, once had trials for one of the Nottingham club's teams. It's Mr. Jack Swindlehurst.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Which team do you have trials for?
It wasn't Notts County. It was like Radcliffe Borough.
That's a made-up team, mate.
Yeah,
it's a made-up team. Never heard of it.
Just out of Nottingham. But yeah, those were the days of my life, really, mate. And featuring in the varsity game at Meadow Lane was a high point. There was plenty of low points there as well. But yeah, I don't think I'd get into any of the teams now.
You famously cut your hair before the reverse fixture earlier in the season. No plans to do that on Saturday, are you?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the cutting the hair really produced a bad performance. So I'm pretty sure I should keep it, and not affect the outcome of the game.
It's a rarity, but we have a third person on the preview pod. A very warm welcome back to the pod, Mr. Josh Parker. Good to see you, sir.
Hello, good to see you both as well. How are we?
Anxious.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
We will explain why Josh is here in a few moments. It's a lovely reason why you're here. But before we get to that, got to do a check-in, mate. How is everyone feeling? Swindle, firstly yourself. How are you feeling about Saturday? How nervous are you feeling? Excited? Anxious? Calm? All of the above?
Yeah, less of the calm. I don't know. It's a horrible point of the season, regardless of kind of what's gone before. And I think there's been quite a lot of unsettling ends to games recently. I think we're up there with a load of teams who are really chasing it and going for it, and some of them are doing better than others, and we're kind of embroiled in this game in hand thing. And there's so many kind of repercussions and thing from each game, and no one's quite taking it by the scruff of the neck, and we're still very much in it, but with every game that passes it feels kind of nerve-wracking going into it, and then it feels like we're managing it well, and suddenly a sting in the tail. So it'd be really nice to see us kind of turn it around and do something good on Saturday and come out of that looking in a better position.
Yeah, I know what you mean about taking it by the scruff of the neck. It feels like us and MK are doing our best to wobble our opponents on Saturday. Whilst they won on Monday, they have a bit of a patchy record over the last few games in winning and losing. Bromley feel like they've just nudged themselves across the line. How about you, Josh? How are you feeling ahead of Saturday?
I think I'm a bit of a weirdo, to be honest, because I'm surprisingly relaxed, I think, about the whole situation. I think I didn't really have too much expectation at the start of the season. I knew we were building a good squad with the signings, and yeah, I'd kind of always thought playoffs anyway. And I think we've shown enough in recent games to know that. I mean, like, look at Swindon. I think the performance, although we didn't get the result, that performance, them being able to grind it out in a one-off game, I think we'd stand us in good stead for the playoffs anyway. So I'm fairly buoyant, frankly. And yeah, like Swindle said, we've got the game in hand scenario as well. If we're still at a point where that actually means something when it comes round. But yeah, I'm surprisingly buoyant, I think.
We'll try and channel our inner Josh Parker, I guess. I mean, you mentioned your expectations there, but have your expectations not changed since the last Notts County game? Because for me, for example, I wasn't as confident as yourself coming into the season. I didn't think we'd finish in the playoffs. I thought a good season would be outside chance of a playoffs with a few games left, but ultimately sort of finishing top 10, top 12. But I find that because we've been on this incredible run of form, only 2 defeats since we last played Notts County, being in the top 3, I feel like my expectations have changed, and they have adapted to what I've seen on the pitch, and that's probably why I feel so awkward at the moment, seeing us maybe not, getting across the line as I was thinking it was going to be. I guess you'll say it was never meant to be plain sailing, and we like to do things the hard way as a Cambridge fan. But I don't know, have your expectations not changed, having spent a lot of the last couple of months in the top three?
Not especially. I think obviously we were on we did go on a very, very good run, but to me that's just evidence that points towards the fact that we will be in the mix at some point. League Two is such a weird and random league that anything could happen. I guess the running under Bonner wasn't exactly smooth sailing, was it? You think about like Harrogate away.
Yeah, Tom and I had this chat on the review.
I know you did. Yeah,
he seemed to forget things like, losing to Cheltenham at home in a title decider and losing away to Bolton and yeah. You're right. You're right to point it out. It wasn't plain sailing last time.
And in League Two, I think Caspel's said in recent pods as well, hasn't he? Like the numbers, I think was it about 82 points normally gets you top three, I think. So we're still, with 5 games to go. Is it 5? 4, 5?
5 to go.
Yeah, there's still plenty of opportunities to get those points over the 80 point barrier. Like I said, I'm just quite relaxed about it all, frankly.
5 for us, but less for others. I think we've got that game in hand, of course.
Yes, that's the confusion, isn't it? For me, anyway. But I think we've all seen enough of this squad to know that we've got big performances in us and big results in us. And I trust Harris as well. I think he's been there, he's done it. I just trust them. I think we've got no reason not to.
Yeah. Let's talk about Easter then, Swindle. Bad time of the year for you as a man that can't eat chocolate. The football didn't help you, huh? How are you feeling? A couple of days on since full time on Monday.
Yeah, it's one of them, and for Lightning to strike twice at such an important time in the season feels cruel. But as I said, earlier, I think there's loads of teams who are kind of going through it, and we're going to look ahead to Notts County, and you look at their Good Friday game, and you talk about galling games. I think they'll be feeling, absolutely gutted about their Good Friday. So I think teams around us aren't setting the world alight. You look ahead, and you look at like MK Dons really stuttering, and I think this point of the season just makes that happen to teams. And I think Harris has actually really instilled a good mentality into this team of managing games, and I think there is a little bit of kind of stuttering over the finish line happening here, and I think that's understandable. I think it's been a long season with a kind of quite a small squad compared to others, and we've dealt with injuries and dealt with people out for a long time and kind of rejigging the team and stuff, and done it very well, and we've come back. You mentioned that last Notts County game, and almost feels like a turning point of the whole season. We were so poor that day, and very much a kind of idea that a lot of people kind of saying we're just going to be stagnating in this league for this season. It's going to be a really boring kind of, nothing to show for it. And suddenly we've come out and really, made a good fist of it. And I think it's just about kind of leveling these players out a little bit. You can't. There is no bigger game than Saturday's game. I don't think Neil Harris will need much of a job to get the players up for it. And I think it's just about kind of, saying to the players, this is your time, make yourself a hero. You've got 2 huge games in the space of 4 days. Go out there, win that on Saturday, and then, spoil the party on Thursday. And suddenly we're in a position where we can be looking at automatics. And I think that has to be the mentality. There's 5 kind of cup finals before now and the end of the season.
Josh, you said you trust Neil Harris. We've not gone 4 games this season without winning. Does that mean anything to you? Does that fill you with confidence ahead of Saturday that we'll bounce back and get the 3 points?
Yeah, it's hard. That's a hard. You've stumped me here a bit. To be fair,
it's my job. It's my job, mate.
Yeah, and you do it very well. I think the magnitude of the game and the context of the game makes that a fairly tricky question to answer. Because there's obviously a world where anything could happen really on Saturday, isn't there? We could lose, we could win, we could get a draw. I just think, again, I come back to it, like the Swindon game, we performed so well in that game that I'm still fairly confident. I think we'll be able to do it on Saturday. I think we'll break that little run. But we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But
it would be a terrible time to go 4 games without a win all season for the first time. Be a bit of a sucker punch.
It would, but again, there's still time. Like if you look at the points, like we've been helped out a lot by other teams as well this season. So I think even if we drop points, I mean, a lose would be pretty damaging, to be fair, wouldn't it? But a draw, I would still fairly, I'd probably be all right with the draw, I think.
The difference about this weekend in comparison to the last games is we've kind of been rolling the dice first, but this weekend, by the time that we come to play, everyone else around us will have played. Bromley MK will have played each other, and Swindon will have played on the Friday night. So we will know where we're at before that game, and those teams will have already played. We'll have 2 games in hand over a couple of those teams at that point, and it'll be a kind of, if you see MK pulling, beating Bromley, and suddenly there's a 2-horse race again. But then if you see Bromley beat MK, MK are right back down in it. That's an incentive for us to go out there and beat County. I think it's a real interesting one where it's kind of flipped on its head, because we were playing first a couple of times in this run up, but now we're playing after all of them, and almost whilst it takes the pressure off playing first, and it's nice to go into those games if you won that game, you feel really edgy if you haven't won that game and you're having to watch them. So now it's kind of, those games will be done and dusted, and we have to go into it and do what we can.
Josh, happy Friday. Today, of course, is Friday. Yesterday, which was Thursday, you were at the training ground. You want to tell us a little bit more about why you were at the training ground?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the starting 11 on Saturday.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I turned up.
Can you head the ball? Can you head the ball?
I can do it all, Jordan. I turned up and I was waiting to be let in, so I was just crunching balls against the crossbar from the halfway line, and Neil Harris saw it. It was like, oh, you're in. So no.
For those that don't know Josh, the running joke is you do look like a Cambridge player who is currently out on loan. But we'll leave that there.
Not Ryan Loft, I'd like to add.
Yeah.
So I was on the pod earlier in the season. So for those who don't remember, I work in the fundraising team at Romsey Mill, and we are Cambridge United's charity partner for the season. And we've got a match day coming up on Saturday against Notts County. And part of that was we've been able to create some really, really amazing opportunities for some of the young people that we're alongside. And we were fortunate enough to take some young people to the press conferences yesterday, where they were able to ask questions of Kel Watts and of Neil Harris. And then we had a little tour of the training ground as well from Neil himself.
Did anyone ask him about the FI pass? Just out of curiosity. Did you stick your hand up? You were like, no. Well, I'll get some answers here.
I was waiting for an opportunity, and then when it came up, I bottled it.
Ah.
Yeah, I know. Jimmy Floyd bottle bank. But
let's hope it's not a sign of things to come this weekend.
Well, yeah, I don't know, maybe. But I mean, Cal Watts, he drinks an amazing amount of coffee before a game, which was like a little, like it's something like 4 or 5 cups of coffee.
I couldn't be doing that. That's too risky for me.
No, that's yeah. But yeah, so we were there. It was a really lovely day, really amazing experience for the young people, and I mean, Neil Harris was just, what a man. He was so good with them and made everyone feel really welcome. And so a really, really lovely day. I think it's being released later today. So if you can check it out, there's some good questions and some good content in there.
What were the vibes at the training ground? I know obviously they're probably conscious they've got visitors, but did it seem like everyone's had smiles on their faces, seemed upbeat?
Yeah, I mean, the feng shui was in balance. It was, it was, everyone was really, like really relaxed, actually. Harris himself was, he seemed really chipper, actually. And then Kel Watts as well. Everyone we spoke to was just really happy and relaxed. There was no, I mean, I guess how much would you see anyway? But everyone seemed really relaxed and chilled. So that filled me with even more confidence, I think, for the run-in. So yeah.
Good stuff. Well, tell us a bit more about Saturday and the Romsey Mill match day. What does that entail? What kind of things might be happening at the ground that we can keep an eye out on?
Yeah, sure. So so before the game, we're going to have a couple of young people who are part of our music program. They're going to be performing in the NRE fan zone. There's going to be a little bit of a stall up next to them as well, where people can come and meet our CEO and some staff. And then we've got a community hero going onto the pitch before the game as well. And then I guess the main thing really for people to be aware of is that we will be collecting any donations towards our Aspire appeal, which is our program for autistic young people. So when you're approaching turnstiles, please look out for a load of kids in yellow t-shirts that we've had made, and members of staff will be taking donations in buckets, card machines, over phone. So yeah, please, if you can, throw something their way on your way past.
It's a great cause. I love Romsey Mill, very local and close to my heart, where I'm based as well. So I wish you all the best for Saturday. Everyone listening to this, do get involved. Josh, it's been nice having you on the pod, mate.
Thank you very much for having me.
See you in the Kingston. Or the Old Spring, if you fancy some drinks with the happy hour offer that is available to all UTAS listeners.
Yeah, I live closer to the Old Spring, so it might have to be that one. Perfect.
Right then, Swindle, you and I, just the two of us carrying on. Bit of news out of the club to, from the week. Neil Harris was nominated for Manager of the Year for League Two. How do you rate his chances?
I don't know. I mean, it's a great thing, great recognition of kind of, the season that we've had. I think he's overcome a number of battles, really, coming in at the back end of a season where we were most likely to get relegated and did. Also coming in after leaving the club in the lurch, just over a year before. I think there was a lot that Neil Harris had to do to kind of win back the Cambridge United fan base, let alone the wider League Two fan base and powers that be. So I think it's recognition of Harris and his team of how well they've done. I think they've pulled this out the bag a bit. You see so many teams coming down from League One, and then really struggling in League Two. And we've seen teams battling right down there for relegation. There was a few people at the start of the season who thought we might be down there, which I think, was a tad disrespectful or unfounded, but it's good that Harris has just come in and steadied that ship and put us in a position 5 games out where if we win our games, we go up. That's a fantastic position to be in, and one that not many people, even the most faithful of fans maybe thought we would do at the start of the season. So yeah, absolutely good recognition. I'm not sure, to be honest, he will care that much about it. I think it's like an accolade, but I think it's recognition to him. But he's just got one focus and one focus only now, and that's going up. And I tell you what, if we do go up, then he fully deserves it. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, good to be recognised, and absolutely right that he's on that list.
So he's up there with other nominees are Mickey Mellon at Oldham, Paul Warne at MK Dons, and then the person who I think is definitely a shoe-in to win this, Andy Woodman at Bromley. What a season and what a story that is. I guess if you look at the rest of the names there, you've got Paul Warne, who had this big budget, lots of big names there, and is still not across the line, and certainly doesn't look like they are odds on to win the title, even though they could. So I guess if you compare to, say, some of the other profiles and nominees, he's definitely right up there, Neil Harris. Like you say, a season which has gone better than a lot of people had predicted. Hopefully, we're still saying that in a couple of weeks' time, and we're not sort of cussing the facts that we're in the playoffs and we've slipped out, because I still feel like that would be a little bit of not only an anticlimax, but a bit of a failure given the strong position that we put ourselves in. In the EFL awards for players, both youth players and sort of player of the year, no Cambridge names in there. What are your thoughts on this, Swindle? Because I can just about get on board with the main player of the year award, but I thought Ben Knight would have a shout for the young player of the year.
It's a weird one, isn't it? And it's funny. I don't know how they kind of quantify these player ones. I mean, the manager one is a bit easier. You can look at it on paper, and I suppose you look at the players and you can see how many goals they've scored and assists, and there's all that data out there. But I think we've been a really like solid unit. It's all very kind of cliche bollocks, really. But I do think we've been like a really solid unit. I think, some people would say Kel Watts could have been in there with a shout as well, in the because he's just been, fantastic and solid and has got a lot of plaudits from other teams in the league. I think that's always a really good sign of a player who is respected when other teams in the league are kind of, heralding your player. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Ben Knight could have been in there with a shout. But again, I think these awards are announced at, nominations are announced at such a funny time. I think, I don't think we really care about that. I don't think we need the distraction, and I don't think any of them are going to be that bothered about not being nominated. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be, if Ben Knight was, in there, I think it would be absolutely deserved. But yeah, I think we focus on the game on the pitch at the moment, and the best reward for all those players would be promotion to League One. I think they couldn't give a hoot really if they got best player and we lost out in the playoffs. So I think the real incentive is to go out and win games like Saturday and Thursday and get promoted.
Speaking of promotion, let's look at that run in then. I've already touched on this, but Bromley, they played midweek. Despite trailing as we were recording the review pod, they went on to win at home 2-1, another win by them by 1 goal. They are now on 83 points, which on the Matt Caspel radar has you promoted. They are 7 clear with those 4 games left to go. So it feels like job done for them, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think, fair play to them because they've been written off time and time again. There was so much conversation about MK walking the league when Bromley were top. And that was really an interesting one to hear because people were still convinced that MK were going to be the team that were going to romp it. And Bromley just kept on winning. And then, people speaking about Bromley being off form when they had like 3 draws in the space of 5 games. And, that's the difference between them and us. They've managed to, kind of have a couple of draws and turn them into wins, and we've had that occasional loss. You look at the Harrogate loss and a couple of others where just at crucial points we've not managed to scrape a draw where we could have done, and equally we've not managed to get a win in the last 2 games, conceding last minute equalisers. So I think Bromley have just been really efficient, gone about their business very well. I do think there's a massive incentive if Cambridge United can beat can beat Notts County on Saturday to go there on Thursday and really try and spoil their party, because I think they've already posted something on social media kind of under the ilk of "I was there" moment. They want everyone to go to that Thursday game at Bromley and because it's going to be the night that they get promoted. So if they could have be upset on Saturday, lose that, and then we could go on there on Thursday and then beat them, it would be really, it'd be a nice way to kind of do that and show that we belong up there as well. So I think there's an incentive for United to go there and spoil the party. We've got to get past Notts County first.
I just did a very quick flick back through the Bromley results going back to October when we played them last and beat them. I noticed 5 1-0 victories, which is very triggering given everything that's gone on over the Easter weekend. They travel to MK on Saturday. You mentioned it already. That's a juicy one, isn't it? How do you see that one planning out?
It's weird, isn't it? I mean, at MK, and you would just think, well, absolutely, MK don't lose at MK, and that they'll have that incentive to catch up Bromley. But we've seen that they're fallible now, MK, and Barnet pushed three past them at Stadium MK. Bromley have got their tails up. They've got that lead. They probably feel a little bit of like the pressure's off. A 9-point gap to the playoffs. So they're basically almost guaranteed automatic promotion, and I think they will feel like that the shackles are off. There's a 7-point gap down to MK, so they lose that game and they've still got 4 points clear. So I think it will be MK who are kind of putting themselves under more pressure, and it might kind of free up the game for Bromley. They'll probably want to try and catch MK on the break. I think MK will be kind of wanting to put a bit of a gap between, Notts County and ourselves. So we'll be trying to go for that. I don't imagine that both teams would settle for a draw, and that I'd be very, very surprised. So I think MK will be going for it, but you could see Bromley coming out on top because of, MK really trying to win that game.
Yes, the pressure is all on MK, right? At home, big crowd, trying to chase them down to catch up the title, and that wobbling form as well, similar to ours. I guess might not be as straightforward a result as we thought it was going to be a few weeks ago. Swindon go to Colchester on the Friday night. Have you got hopes on that one being a tough encounter for Swindon? I have.
Yeah, I've got hopes. And Colchester have just kind of managed to kind of stop the rot. They were going through an absolutely, awful run of games and looked like it was going to be just an absolute setup, but they managed to win away at Tranmere last time out. And I think that's, that's a little bit of a glint of hope for United fans. I think if Colchester can just go out there and give Swindon a really hard time, Friday night games, there's always something funny happens on a Friday night. So, and it's at Col U. A bit of a long way to go for Swindon fans. So yeah, I'd fancy Col U to do something, even if they can, keep them down to a draw. And like I said to you earlier, having the games out of the way before we play on on Saturday does kind of give us a weird bit of freedom. We know what's happened. We'll know where we are. If Swindon win, it will be down to fifth. Notts County will also be out of the play, out of the automatics. So then, it's just kind of like keeping everything level. We know what we got to do. Col U haven't got anything to play for really, but I mean, you just kind of feel they've picked up a win. They'll want to give their fans a nice end to the season, keep the fan base going. So, yeah, why not? Why not a Col U 1-0 win?
Salford at home to Gillingham. I'm not expecting anything other than a Salford win there.
No.
Let's move on to the presser then. One of the things that made me smile was Neil Harris saying that he'd love to play on Saturday. How much would you love a striker like he was at this time, Swindle? Like a real classic old school centre forward, big work rate, really good movement in the box, but above anything, really good finishing from close range.
Yeah, it's what we need, isn't it? I mean, if he's still got his boots kicking around, I wouldn't mind him having 20 minutes at the end. But I think it's exactly right. It's exactly the type of player that we could really use with, for this weekend. But, a player that doesn't exist so much anymore, that kind of terrier type player, who's an absolute handful, getting amongst it. He probably wouldn't last 10 minutes on a football pitch in this day and age anyway. He'd be sent off for sure. We've seen what he's like on the touchline, let alone if we let him loose on the pitch. But yeah, I think it is the type of player. There is a conversation to be had around how we line up and who leads the line after a pretty tough few weeks for Mr. Appere. But yeah, Harris would be a fantastic player to call upon. But like I said to you, we've had a season where everyone's chipped in. We've been a real unit. We've come through games against tough teams and won them and got goals from all over. So yeah, I think, as much as that would be a nice thing to have, we don't, but we've got this far. We're the masters of our own destiny still. And I think, yeah, that's the way we've got to look at it. And Saturday's no different.
One of the things that I found interesting in the presser was he was, well, firstly, just to go back to what you said there, great use of the word terrier. It's not a word. It's not a word we use enough on this pod. Just thinking about that. Let's get that in more. But in the presser, Neil Harris was asked about how could we be more clinical and whether it's something the coaching staff can help with. And Neil Harris talked about things like how goal scoring is around anticipation in the area and reading the game and things like that. How frustrating must it be for him as a manager that was so good at that, to be sort of trying to encourage people to be able to follow his lead, and how frustrating must it be for him as a manager, sort of looking at especially Thursday night's game where you do all the hard work but then just can't find that final moment to finish it off and get yourself another goal.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? If you look at the top 3-4 scorers in the league, you've got Drynan at Swindon, Cheek at Bromley, and Jatta at Notts County. I think they're all players who have that kind of inert ability to do it, and they're like right on the the shoulder. They know where the ball's going to land. I think Cheek especially is that player who just knows where it's going to land and can anticipate it. And I think we've kind of dealt with a kind of muddle of different options up top, and I think that's partly why we haven't fired quite on all cylinders this season, which sounds insane to say given where we are in the league and the position we're in. But I think had we had that 20 goal a season striker, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. So I think it is just kind of those players all have that ability, and it's kind of tapping into that and encouraging that and getting them to channel that in those last 5 games and just kind of not putting them under too much pressure, but just making sure that they understand the gravity of these games now. This is huge for people's careers. This is huge for the club. This is huge for so many people involved in this. And of course, the fans, be right on it, make the preparation for the game as good as you can, put in those extra, hours in training and do all of that. And, be at your best going into the game and you'll produce.
Harris was talking about how since since Monday evening, and I think he even said they did it on the coach on the way home. They were been talking a lot as a group about the positives. We were the best team in those two games. The opportunities, the form since we last played since we last played Notts County in October, and how we've only lost twice since then. Like reinforcing all the big positives. Where do you think the players will be in response to that? Do you think, or do you worry that there's an element that they might be subconsciously starting to be a little bit wobbly, a little bit bottly? Like if things don't go particularly well on Saturday and it gets into the latter stage of the game and it's a draw, or if it's a 1 goal lead for us, do you think that might, those demons and those ghosts from the last couple of games might start creeping into players and, I don't know, bring in some nerves, bring in some mistakes? Like, how are you thinking that the team might be feeling going into Saturday?
I think it's a funny one because I think we're going to be with, basically a sellout crowd at the Abbey. It's going to be an absolutely bumper one. And I think it'll be really interesting to see. It's not like we're playing like a team who've got nothing to play for. This is such a high stakes game that I think Notts County will be experiencing exactly the same emotions and the same kind of, the same feelings we are. Because you look at the league table and they've actually had quite a good run in the last 6 games, but those 2 losses will have hurt them really hard, and they will know more than anyone. You look back to their Good Friday game, 0-0 at 90 minutes, and they managed to lose that game 2-1, even when they equalised in the 95th. I think Notts County fans and players will be more nervous than anyone in the league, given that it's happened to us twice, but that loss at Salford will be pretty close in the memory. And I think everybody at this point in the season has that on their mind, trying to get over the line, trying not to fluff your lines at the most important point. I think Neil Harris is a man who can instill confidence in players. I think the whole squad is going to be really important for this last 5 games. I think the changes that Neil Harris makes in game could be the difference between us, being in the playoffs and going up automatically. And I think, there's not many better managers equipped at this level to do that, a big manager for a big time. And I think it's going to be about that roll of the dice and whether he can get it right.
You mentioned Notts County feelings. Feels like a good time to find out how they are feeling. I'm going to pass you all over to the fan preview that you recorded, Swindle.
Right then, news fans, I'm joined by George from Notts County Talk. George, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
So, as games go, they don't get much bigger than this one. It's an absolute humdinger, and could decide the fates of both sides. Currently, Notts County occupying that 3rd place, 76 points from 42 games. Cambridge in 4th place, 74 from 41. Just how big is this game going to be on Saturday?
Huge, and you can't really put it into words, can you? Because a win for either team does so much for everything: momentum, confidence, for everything. Belief, so much. So the game's huge, and I feel like for both sides, obviously, we're both chasing automatics. That's obviously the target. But I always think in these games where potentially we could play each other in the playoffs, to feel like that we can stand up to each other, I think would, is what we want to see. Do you know what I mean? But obviously the main priority is top 3, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think nerves are already starting to jangle up here, and I'm sure they are in Notts as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we look at the game in depth, looking back at your Easter weekend, probably one of the games of the season on Good Friday, and not the one that you want to be on the wrong end of. I'm very sorry to have to bring it up, but Crackers game against Salford, finally losing 2-1. How was the game and what happened there?
Well, the game started and I thought Salford looked good. Salford are a bit of a bogey team for Notts. I think it's 7 times that we have played each other, I think they beat us 5 or 6 of those times. So they're a bit of a bogey team for Notts. We even played them in the FA Cup a good few years ago when they were right down the pyramid, and they did a number on us then. So I was actually speaking to Danny. He's a Salford fan, has his own podcast and fan magazine. He's a good lad. And he sort of asked us what do we think of Salford, and like there was 3 of us Notts fans on the call at the time. We all sort of had different opinions, but my opinion was, they're a difficult side to play against, and in the first half, I think that did happen. We were really up against it. They're a physical side, but we can deal with that now a lot more than previous seasons. We're a lot more of a physical side. We've definitely added that to our sort of style this season. But then in the second half, I thought we had some really good chances, and I thought we could have nicked it, to be honest with you. And then obviously the devastating blow in the 91st minute, Salford score, and you think even the commentary team, they were saying that's it, game over. What a way to lose. And then we got the other end, and it's probably one of the worst goals you'll ever see. Like, it somehow ended up in the back of the goal. Obviously, everyone's going crazy. And then, the Salford pretty much from kickoff get a corner. And then it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The most gut-wrenching way to lose a game ever, to be honest with you. And we've had some stinkers over the years, I'm thinking, Grimsby in the playoffs in the National League when they literally scored in like the 121st minute to beat us, just similar feelings. But yeah, awful result against Salford. It's a disappointment. Like, a point would have done wonders for us as well. Like, where we sit now, a point would be massive because we'd have 3 points on you then. So yeah, real shame.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced last minute disappointment ourselves over the Easter weekend twice as well, so we can certainly identify not quite as gut-wrenching as that, but happier hunting for you on Easter Monday, convincing 3-1 victory against Newport at home. How was that game?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the first half it looked like the Newport was rolling over for us, to be honest with you, and I thought it could have been really high numbers at times in that game. But they came out the second half and they were a little bit better. They got a goal back. It was against the run of play, but we're undoing ourselves a little bit defensively, and that has been frustrating. But in terms of first team players, we're down massively. Like, we have some injuries, we have some suspensions. So at the moment we don't really have a solid starting 11, as in you don't know who's going to start and where they're going to start. So I think that sort of comes into play a little bit with conceding goals like that. But then Luca, he comes on, who has had pretty much a season-long injury. He's on loan from Luton. He's a quality player. Just before he got injured, he was so good for us. I think he scored a hat-trick in a cup game just before he got injured, and he looked really impressive. He comes on. He's came on for a couple of cameos now later on in the game. And he gets the third goal, and it's a beautifully taken goal. And he could have even got a fourth goal for us, but he just took the chance a little bit early. So we've got players coming in at the right time, like himself, Luca, who are coming back from injury. But we've also got a lot of key players out. And look, I think you can only beat what's in front of you. But without being disrespectful to Newport, they're rock bottom of the league, aren't they? So we can't get too carried away with that victory, I don't think.
Yeah, no, fair point. But as you say, a good response for a goal-in result like Salford, and putting yourselves right in it. Let's just quickly look at the season as a whole. Obviously, we're most of the way through it. How has your season been, kind of from start to now, and how do you feel about the rest of this season? Are you confident about getting that last automatic place, or how is the feeling amongst fans at the moment?
I don't think, if I had to say, I don't think anyone's confident that we're going to get top three. There's probably a handful of fans that would say that we're confident we're going to do it and things like that. But I think the reality is no one's 100% confident, Like, you can't be really in this position. And Notts just seem to have the ability to get themselves in really good positions and just fail when it's like on the plate for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, last season was the pinnacle of that. We were in and around the top three. I think it was like the last 4 or 5 games. I think the top 3, 4, 5 teams were all losing. Can you remember? So we just have that in the back of our minds. Like, the last automatic promotion we got was a very long time ago into League One. I think it was 2010, 11 maybe. It just feels like a lifetime ago, and it is like it's 15 years ago now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always felt like playoffs. But there's something different about us this season. There's definitely a mentality difference and a style difference where we're a lot better on the counter. We're prepared to play on the counter as well, which previous seasons we haven't. Like, if sort of plan A tippy-tapping around wasn't working, we sort of struggled to adapt to games like that where teams have put it on you. So, yeah, I mean, up and down season, that's definitely a bit of a disciplinary issue as well, I think, at the club. You've probably seen the most notable one with Norburn throwing the boot off the pitch.
Yeah.
Like he for us, like last season we talked about not having many senior players that sort of have that experience. But Norburn was like that sort of player that we needed in the centre of the park with experience, and he wasn't actually starting many games at the start of the season. Started to start a load of games, key player, really, really important for us. And then against Chesterfield, he does that in such a key game for us. After 17 minutes, he's got 2 yellows and he's sent off. The 2 silliest yellows you'll ever see. Then he does this very similar thing against Oldham where he's sort of lashing out, like just no need to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a disciplinary issue, but I mean, all round we're happy. And to sort of finish this off as well, to add earlier on about, we've lost 12 games this season. And the following game after losing, we have won 10 of those 12 times. So that's a good start, that shows a good mentality to sort of draw a line under losing a game, So, there's definitely been a bit of a change in mentality at the club.
Blimey, that is some stat. And scary stuff. This time of the season is just horrible for the nerves. And whatever position you're in, whether you're in the driving seat or not. I mean, I'm sure there's Bromley fans who are still absolutely cacking it, and they're almost there. Let's look towards the game a little bit then. Obviously, you said about injuries, and you'll be missing players through suspension. I believe Jatta will be missing after that citation, whatever happened after the game. But could you pick out a couple of players for Cambridge fans to look out for who might kind of make the difference for County in this game?
Yeah, so Leon Love for me. He came in and it was a bit of an underwhelming signing. But the replacement, he was sort of brought in for a player that we actually paid for, who has now been loaned out to Sligo in Ireland. So it's a better replacement for what we had. But he is such a physical player. Like he's really muscly, and he's quite quick as well. I think he can be a key player in these final games. He's a senior player who's got lots of experience. So I do like him. He's a forward. I'm going to say Ness as well. Ness, he's a centre-back. He actually scored the 2 headers, pretty much exactly the same from corners, looping headers against Newport at the weekend. So actually his first and second goal for Notts. But again, a player that's not seen much game time this season due to our defence being pretty in place. But then we've had some long-term injuries with Matty Platt, but he's come in and he's been quality, and he got 2 really nice goals. So definitely keep an eye on Ness.
Yeah, certainly interesting to see, which team takes this game by the scruff of the neck and whether it's going to be a cagey one. How do you think the game's going to go, and how do you think County are going to kind of set up in this game?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. It's really hard for me to answer that, to be honest with you. We've seen so many changes to the lineup. Once or twice as well, we've seen the shape of the squad change as well. But I think he's probably just going to keep it as it has been, which is sort of like a 3-5-2, more or less. Sometimes he's playing with 2 strikers, sometimes he's playing with 1. He sort of changes it. So it is hard to say. It's really hard to say, but we've sort of put to bed panicking in games, I think if you put it on us and you're really piling the pressure on us, we can sort of bide our time a little bit, and because we're able to defend quite well. So I think that could play in our favour. And I'm hoping to see Luca come on as well and make a difference, because he's been quality.
Yeah, certainly be interesting to see. And nervy times for someone to make themselves a hero. Right, just before we go then, we always put guests on the spot. How do you think the game's going to go, and what do you think the score's going to be?
I think it's going to be a very, very cagey affair. I'm obviously going to put my Notts County hat on, aren't I? Yeah, I can't not. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Notts win. I think you guys will score first, but then I think we'll score not long after you, and then later on in the game.
Yeah, sounds absolutely awful, but it's that point in the season, do or die. Listen, George, thanks for taking the time for joining us.
No worries.
Thank you very much for that. What's the current feeling at Notts County then, Swindle? What did you pick up doing that interview?
That was just two nervous blokes having a really horrible conversation. Like, they're very much in the same position we are. It's just so nip and tuck at the moment. And I think, when we started talking, even before we started recording it felt like, that George was just a little bit like tentative. I think they've had such a few good runs this season and they've tailed off and they've come back into it and they've never quite had the kind of rampant consistency that an automatic team generally has. So I think it's been quite a tough season for them. I don't think it's been straightforward, and now they're back in it at the best possible time. But I think they have a lot of respect for us because they turned us over at their place quite easily and with one of our worst performances of the season. But they've seen what we've done since and how far we've managed to come and get ourselves into it. So there's definitely no kind of arrogance from county fans coming here. I think they're kind of, tentative. I think, if this game ended in a draw, it wouldn't be a nightmare for either team. And I'm not saying that either team wants it to end in a draw, but I think, County especially would be happy to come here and go away with a draw and approach the rest of their, games for the rest of the season. You look at who else they've got, they host Barnet, they travelled to Collieu, probably both winnable, and then Bristol Rovers last day of the season at Meadow Lane. So I think there's, that they'll quite fancy, getting some points out of the rest of the game. So I think coming to Cambridge, they're going to be looking at that, and they won't play for a draw, but they'd be very happy to take one away. So I think that's a dangerous team to play. And given our running and certainly Thursday, we need to be mindful of that, and if there are chances there, take it.
What was mentioned in the fan interview was a prediction that it's going to be a cagey affair. I think that's very, very valid. What I find interesting about Notts County, and what your thoughts on this, Swindle, I think they do the basics very, very well. So things like beating Newport, beating Harrogate, beating Cheltenham, beating Accrington, they've done that over the last few weeks, and they've done it with quite a bit of conviction. 4 goals against Accrington, 5 against Cheltenham, for example. What I'm noticing from the last couple of months, though, is not all the time, but quite a few examples where they do come unstuck against some of the better teams in the league. Definitely teams that are well organised and good defences. So are we optimistic looking at this and going, okay, well, a defeat away to Salford, a defeat away to Oldham, defeat to Chesterfield, Grimsby, all in sort of, recent memory.
I feel like they might just be, like I've said, I just feel like there might be that lack of consistency, that exactly what you're saying, and it's a bit of a kind of unknown entity. It's which Notts County turn up, and I think they've been so hot and cold, and I think we've mentioned ourselves on this podcast in recent weeks that a lack of discipline has certainly, really kind of hindered them this season. As much as we look at Jatta, missing out on this game for another kind of infringement, and you that hilarious Norburn incident earlier in the season with the throwing of the boot away, and I think that's been a frustration for fans and has kind of, as I say, hindered them. And I think had that not been a thing, they'd certainly be in a better position. But there has been a lack of consistency, and I think away from home they have gone missing in games, and I think we need to look at that and try and prey on that. If we can start well against them early, I don't think there's any reason why we can't. What we do need to do, and what we've learned from Easter weekend, is if we get that first goal, we can't just sit on it and expect to see that game out. I think we need to actually, believe in ourselves. If we want to be a League One team going up automatically from League Two, we should be able to go out against anyone in this league and double our lead, rather than trying to sit on it and pray that we get 3 points over the line. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting test for us, but I don't think County will be that confident, even though George predicted a nervy 2-1 win.
I was going to ask about their late goals, because you mentioned our sort of inability there to kill games off and get the second goal. Late goals recently for Notts County, the Salford game that we just mentioned on Good Friday. Didn't win the game, but it was a late goal anyway. The Walsall game a couple of weeks before that, I remember they won that very late coming from behind. I guess in general, how worried are you by the late goals that we seem to be conceding over the last couple of weeks? And is that, I don't know, is that emphasise anymore going into a game against a team like Notts County that have this sort of history of getting those late goals, have a good attack, admittedly without Jatta this Saturday. Does it write the halftime team talk for teams visiting the Abbey? If you're trailing at half time, say, well, if it's just one goal in it, these guys can be got at late and they might be nervy.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're exactly right. I think it's just a case of stand up and be counted, boys. If you want this, you're going to have to want it for the full 95, 100 minutes, not for, 89, 90. And I think, as you say, Notts County are really good at sticking at games. And, even in that Newport game, they scored late in that just to steal the victory. And I think it's about game management, and it's about a bit about stamina, but I don't actually think we lack the stamina. I think it is more the kind of confidence in the game management. And I think hopefully this last few days, Neil Harris has been able to kind of drum into the players how important it is to, use every minute of that game and, treasure the ball when you've got it near the end. I still can't really believe about MK having that ball in the corner in the 93rd and conceding that penalty right at the end. I think, if we come to the end of this season and look at, we're looking at Cambridge United in the playoffs, I think that and the Harrogate loss will really sting. So, combined with those Easter, the Easter pair of last minute goals. So I think it's really important that, Harris just drums into this team that, they owe this to the fans. They owe the fans, a victory. And as I've said on a few podcasts recently, it doesn't matter about the performance, but what it does matter about is the result, and the points. Had we won those two games over Easter 1-0, we'd be absolutely raving about it. We'd be saying, Harris.
We'd be talking about a title challenge, wouldn't we?
Yeah. And rightfully so. But sadly, Harris has had to wear some of that, but really the players should be kind of held accountable for that, because they're out there and they've let it slip right at the end. And I know there's questions about changes and questions about starting people like Apre and all of that kind of thing. But ultimately, when you get down to this crunch point at the end of the season and you're 2 minutes away from 3 points and you end up going away with one, the players really have to take some of that on board. So hopefully what's happened this week is Harris has really kind of drummed into them the importance of seeing it through.
Let's talk about us. What would you consider a good result on Saturday?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately what I'm asking there is anything other than a win okay? Can you see a world where you would deem a draw a good result?
I wouldn't deem it a good result. I could deem it an okay result. If Bromley beat MK and guarantee promotion, and Swindon, even if Swindon draw or lose to Colchester and we draw, then, it's okay. We still have the game in hand. It means we have to go to Bromley and win, really. At one of these games, we're going to have to win. And that's the thing. You look towards Grimsby and you look towards Barrow and, you look towards the final day. But really, we're going to have to look at one of these two games and win them. And I think that's the kind of crux of playing at this point of the season at the top of the division. You're going to be playing teams who are also vying for promotion. You're going to be playing teams who are down there, whatever, and you need to go out and win games. So as much as a draw wouldn't be a disaster, it would be much better if we bloody won the game. And I think we owe it to the fans. I think genuinely, after, what was really gutting Easter weekend, to see that many people turning up. I mean, obviously they're not going to be hard tickets to sell for Saturday, are they? But amazing support still, and we've seen amazing support away. We've seen a fantastic following that went to Barnet and didn't really get what they deserved. So I think there's a bit out there that Harris should just be like, this is your carrot, go and take it, give this to the fans, celebrate with these fans at the end, and let that momentum carry us through until Thursday. Do the same again on Thursday, fill that place out, and then suddenly, if you can get 4 or 6 points from these two games, we're in the driving seat.
Is it game over for automatic promotion if we lose on Saturday? So a defeat on Saturday would put us 5 points behind Notts County, four to play,
and then also Swindon might win. So yeah, that would also put us another position down. I really think a loss would be fairly critical. Stranger things have happened, but it would rely, and we've not really been in a position this season so far where we've had to rely on other people's results, and then we'd be sucking ourselves into that eventuality thing, permutations, I think they start to call it. I'd really like to avoid using that word on the podcast as much as possible. So yeah, hopefully we can go out and keep it in our own hands. And yeah, it's really nice not to be having those conversations and going into a final day where there's a million different things, and we're all huddled round phones trying to work out if we're up or in the playoffs.
Let's talk about some team news and possible lineups. It was confirmed in the presser that Brophy has a broken hand, but is available for the game on Saturday. Corey Smith has missed the last couple of games with a foot injury that he got from the Barnet game and might be back in the squad on Saturday. One of the things that I want to get your opinion on, Swindle, reading a lot online, message boards, etc., querying about whether we start Lavery. What's your take on this one?
Oh, mate, it's a really tough one. I think, that's a player that we've seen such great glimpses from in his whole time here at United. When he's been fit, he's been really good. And in this last return from injury, he's almost been wrapped in cotton wool. He's had a few cameos here and there and kind of come in. And there was a lot of people saying, imagine if we had Shane Lavery, last 5 or 6 games of the season when we needed a player like that to get promoted. This is the last 5 or 6 games of the season, and there is a kind of a devil on my shoulder saying, now's the time. Let's roll the dice. Let's give it a go. I mean, it might not go that well, but we've literally had this conversation 10 games ago about if we had a Shane Lavery at this point in the season, how good would that be? We've managed to rest him and use him sparingly. I think now might be the time to do it. There's no room for kind of error now. It's either do it or don't. So I think just go for it. And that's a bit savage as far as Lavery's concerned. But
if you're going to do it for one game and one game only in the remaining 5, it'd be this one, right?
100%.
I know it's hard to answer that because, we don't know what we're going to need from your Barrow games, your Grimsby games, your Crew games, etc. So
but it'd be so amazing if
it'd be the Crew game. But
yeah,
right now, I do get it. I do see the point of, if you could play him and he might be that difference in the first 50, 60 minutes of getting a second goal versus just getting the one goal.
Yeah.
My take on Lavery is introduce him earlier. The Thursday night against Cheltenham was quite a late introduction, a bit earlier away to Cheltenham, but I just didn't really like the style that that Tom sort of pointed out on the review show. Where we swapped him on and we've just basically hit it long. That won't work in my opinion against Notts County if they play free at the back.
Yeah, there's 2 things to consider here as well. I think Neil Harris won't change his spots. I think he's going to be that type of manager that will roll the dice a little later and it might take a while for the systems to change. And that's why I think it might be worth getting, 45 even, 50, 55 minutes out of Shane Lavery. And as you say, maybe score that second, or really make a difference, tire out their defence. I also think we need to consider the weather on Saturday, which sounds a bit mental, but it's going to absolutely piss it down for like a lot of Saturday. I think or it's going to be
conditions talk. I'm here for conditions talk.
Consistently raining, not piss it down, but like consistent rain for like the whole morning and into the afternoon could make it like a little bit of a kind of, a tricky one for defenders slipping all over the place. And someone like Lavery running in behind and really making people's lives difficult, I think could be the one. I'm not sure. An Apre or a Nevitt might, do as well up there in those conditions. So, I think it could be the day for Shane Lavery. And, I really hope I don't get proved wrong, but I'd love to see it.
Neil Harris did bemoan the Cheltenham pitch for being dry. So maybe that rain is what we need. So not only manifesting Swindle, but get outside and do some sort of rain dance, maybe.
Cool.
The other big conversation is the same area of the pitch. It's Nevitt or Apare. Where's your head on this one in terms of starting?
Well, you will see the article that's come out in defence of Apre on undertheabbeystand.com. I think it's a really interestingly written one.
Another great reason to be a Coconut Tier member, just saying it.
100%. And I think he's had a really tough introduction to his United career and actually had some really good performances and scored some good goals. And I think sadly, it's the wrong way around for him. Sometimes you see players come in and struggle a little bit and then it comes good. And sadly for Apre, it's been the other way around. He's come in and started quite well and then, tailed off, and I feel for him. So I really hope there is still, another bit in Apare's story. But I think Nevitt is going to be that type of player who can really upset people at the back and really get into them. He needs to, manage his kind of discipline. But I do think Nevitt could be a really good person to have, a huge game against Notts County, loud crowd getting behind him. He's a big player, literally, for a big game. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Nevitt, I think, in there. And you never know, Apre being a player you call from the bench. He is that kind of Big Joe mold sometimes, where he just finds himself in the right place in the box and gets a toe to it and pokes it home. And how nice would it be to see, an Après winner from the bench in one of these huge games before now and the end of the season?
I like Après. I like the work rate. It's just his finishing is not there, and that's it's obviously a big concern. And I just don't think him as a lone striker works. So
no,
I'd like to see a formation similar to the Thursday night Swindon result, where you were getting people close to him. It felt like Ben Knight was almost a second striker at points. So for me, in terms of line up and formation for Saturday, I'd like to see that same starting 11 from the Swindon game. What about yourself, Swindle? How do you think Neil Harris is going to line up on Saturday?
It's a bit boring, to be honest, because I was going to say pretty much exactly the same. I think like how we did against Swindon. I think, there's a lot of comments coming out from friends of the pod and other people I was speaking to who said that actually Swindon, we played very well for the most part. I think we were very good. And then we just, fluffed the lines at the end. So if we can go out and do that again with a bit more conviction and see off Notts County, it just puts us in such a good position. I really think that, like, I've spoken already about the result and a draw not being a nightmare, but a victory is such a statement in this game. And I think, be it convincing or otherwise, I think if we set up like that and play like we did against Swindon, then there's a real kind of, confidence about Cambridge United. And if we can just use, the incentive of a couple of gutting late equalisers to kind of right some wrongs on that day, I reckon that could be the play for us and could see us bringing home all 3 points.
Are we going to do it, Swindle? What's your outlook for Saturday? What's your prediction?
I think we're going to do it. I don't think it's going to be pretty, and I think it's going to be a really, it's going to be a nervy. I think it's going to be a lot of kind of, I think there's going to be a few refereeing calls that are kind of here and there. I think we'll get pegged back late, but I think something's going to happen late on in this game that we're going to remember come the end of the season. That's really going to kind of define this last 5 games. And I couldn't care less who it is, but if it was a Kel Watts thigh into the top corner of the opposition goal, I'd be very, very happy.
I'm going 1-0. The worst scoreline, 1-0 with what, 8 minutes of injury time at the end.
If it's still 1-0 when that whistle goes, mate, I don't mind.
I might get up and leave when the injury time board goes up. Brilliant. I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you always, everyone, for listening. We will be back with the review show on Monday, hopefully talking about a glorious 3 points and a return to the top 3. A final reminder, as always, to check out our sponsors this season, the Old Spring at number 1, Ferry Path, a whole host of Cambridge United related deals for you, including the Matchday Meal Deal, the Saturday Happy Hour for half price drinks, 6 till 7 o'clock, and a ticket holder discount, 10% off any time throughout the week. We've already talked about the coconut tier, but do head to undertheibisstand.com to find out more. Welcome Gaz, our latest coconut tier member. Love to have you here, mate. Swindle, I'll see you post-game on Saturday, I think. We can dance in the rain together with that win that you have manifested for us.
Can't wait, mate. Can't wait.